Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Thursday, the 19th of April, 2018. And it should be a stunningly beautiful early spring morning here. And sadly, it's not, because overnight it seems that the aircraft movements over this particular part of the country have been somewhat excessive, and we have a sheen across the sky of aircraft trails. And if this isn't pollution, then I don't know what is. You know, the great tragedy is that it seems that it's a lot easier to get people to be concerned about something that they can't actually see than it is to get people to actually look up and see what's going on above their heads. Because yesterday was a beautiful day here in North Nottinghamshire. The skies were beautifully clear, and it wasn't until sunset that we started to see the aircraft trails appear. And then it seems that for whatever reason, pretty much every aircraft in the northern hemisphere overflew this area last night and has left this sheen across the sky. So it's warmer than it has been, but probably not as warm as it could have been. But like I said, the great sadness is that the environmental NGOs and environmental MPs seem to want to ignore this issue and focus on other areas. So what is it? Let's just get people to take a look up. At the very, very least, this is pollution on a similar, if not greater scale than that caused by traffic fumes. However, April the 19th, a very auspicious day. If you follow the occult calendar, this is the day of sacrifice by fire. It's the first day in a 13-day period when those who believe that they are the rightful rulers of a planetary fiefdom have a tendency to initiate events which end in a tragic loss of human life. And I'll leave people to do their own research, but at the very least, I would say, stay very vigilant and, be alert to what occurs and what is manipulated over, the next 13 days or so. So anyway, we're going to start by looking at the issue of 5G and the impact of street lighting today, because in last week's national press, in the Sun, in the Mail, in the Times even, there were articles that had been written based upon Mark Steele's campaign to raise awareness of the threats of LED street lighting and of 5G, and in particular in his hometown of Gateshead. Well, after these articles appeared in the national press, Gateshead Council went into overdrive to dismiss these accusations and allegations as just rampant conspiracy theory not based on fact. But what's interesting, of course, is that Gateshead Council didn't offer any evidence to support that statement. They didn't deny that they'd implemented LED streetlights. The only thing they did deny was that the LED streetlights had been or were using a 5G technology as a trial run. Well, let's just take a look here at who perhaps isn't telling the whole truth. Because, the council have claimed that allegations that residents have suffered from nosebleeds and increasing intensity of headaches and even miscarriages was just denied. No suggestion that basically they had evidence to prove that these accusations were incorrect, but they just simply denied it and dismissed it as rampant conspiracy theory. And what they've said is that Gateshead Council has suggested that that its LED streetlights are in any way related to the phenomena of increased headaches, nosebleeds, and even miscarriages in areas where they have been installed are vehemently denied, as is the suggestion that Gateshead is being used for 5G trials. But let's have a look at some of the evidence, the scientific evidence that is in the public domain, which Gateshead Council and every other local authority and national government doesn't want to acknowledge. And let's start with the Harvard School of Public Health, which is directly linked with Harvard University in Massachusetts in the UK, in the US. And this is from a School of Public Health report from last year. And it says, our results suggest that the widespread exposure to outdoor lighting during nighttime hours could represent a novel risk factor for breast cancer. And that's a statement from the assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, Professor Peter James, who goes on, he says, previous studies have suggested that exposure to outdoor lights during nighttime hours may lead to decreased levels of the hormone melatonin, which can disrupt circadian rhythms, our internal clocks that gather sleepiness and alertness, and in turn lead to increased breast cancer. Well, in June 2016, the American Medical Association released a report on LED streetlights in particular. And they write, converting conventional streetlights to energy efficient LED lighting leads to cost and energy savings. And approximately 10% of existing US street lighting has been converted to LED technology. However, despite the energy efficiency benefits, some LED lights are harmful when used as street lighting. The detrimental effects of high-intensity LED lighting are not limited to humans. Excessive outdoor lighting disrupts many species that need a dark environment. For instance, poorly designed LED lighting disorients some bird, insect, turtle and fish species. Consequently, US national parks have adopted optimal lighting designs and practices that minimize the effects of light pollution on the environment. And then another paper that is available in the US National Library of Medicines. And here it states, the spread of radio frequency electromagnetic fields, RF-EMF, is rising and health effects are still under investigation. Radio frequency electromagnetic fields promote oxidative stress, a condition involved in cancer onset, in several acute and chronic diseases, and in vascular homeostasis. The World Health Organization has classified radio frequency electromagnetic fields as possibly carcinogenic to humans, and more recent studies suggest reproductive, metabolic, and neurological effects of RF-EMF, which are also able to alter bacterial and antibiotic resistance. And then perhaps the professor who has really established himself as the authority on the risks of electromagnetic fields is Martin Pall. Now, Martin Pall, P-A-L-L, is the Professor Emeritus of Biochemistry and Basic Medical Sciences at Washington State University. Now, I've made the observation many times over the last decade plus that actually, any Professor Emeritus writing a report needs to be taken notice of, because it's only when a professor is emeritus, i.e. effectively retired, that he's no longer on the payroll, and he's no longer therefore able to be dictated to by the academic establishment because of risk of corporate funding. But so Martin Pall, he has published a paper in August of 2015. In fact, he wrote it and produced it and sent it out for distribution exactly 3 years ago, and then it was accepted as peer-reviewed in August of 2015. And the title of the paper is Microwave Frequency Electromagnetic Fields, EMF, produce widespread neuropsychiatric effects, including depression. And he basically has established that this prevalence of electromagnetic fields, particularly in urban areas, has led to a significant increase in depression, which of course Big Pharma love, because that means that they can pump the community full of SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, otherwise known as antidepressants. And of course, your government love the fact that more people are on antidepressants. And in fact, recently, the British media ran a campaign saying that more people need to go to their doctors and get antidepressants. Because once you start taking the course of these happy pills, this is the sort of 21st century version of Soma, once you start taking these happy pills, then everything else is not a problem. And, you know, you're going to believe every piece of crap that you read in the lamestream media or hear on the BBC News. And, you know, basically it's going to shut down your capacity, or severely curtail, let's say, your capacity for independent thought, and certainly for any independent analysis or use of discretion and discernment about the information that you are taking on board. So even people not subjected to outrageous doses of antidepressants, unfortunately, in many cases don't have the time, even if they have the inclination, to actually do their own research and take a look at the evidence that is out there, but you do have to make a bit of effort and scratch around and look for it. And they don't have the time because they're chasing, you know, money to be able to keep a roof over their head and food on their table. You know, more and more companies, well, in fact, I don't know of any company right now that really could claim to have any degree of social responsibility. You know, it's just PR. The reality is that their employees are simply a human resource to be used, abused and discarded on a whim. You know, there is no such thing as loyalty to an employee. So, you know, when people are having to work 40, 50, 60 hours just to make enough money to provide for the basics of their families, then they're obviously not going to have the time to do the necessary research. And this is exactly what the establishment wants. So it's really important, it's really, really important that those people who do have the capacity and the motivation to do their research find ways to share that information, however that may be, whether it's just talking down the pub, whether it's talking to your work colleagues, and just sowing the seeds, not being evangelical about it, but just sowing the seeds, and of course always encouraging them to do their own research. So this concern about EMF is exacerbated with the rollout of 5G. And as we've seen in Sheffield, you know, where the council are on a mission to remove 17,500 trees from the Sheffield urban area, and the same thing is going on elsewhere in the country, but nobody, of course, wants to acknowledge or admit that the reason behind this is because of the rollout of technology. And what's happening here, and it's the same with unconventional gas exploitation, it's the same with whatever's causing this outrageous pollution in the skies today. It's the same, you know, with fracking. The technology is being rolled out before it has been properly researched. And then by the time it is rolled out and people start to become aware that it is having negative effects on the environment or on the human community or on the wildlife, then it's just a question of going into denial and saying, no, really, no. Because the focus then is corporate profit, corporate greed. So it's a very, very sad situation that, you know, we find ourselves in right now in the, you know, what am I, nearly 20% of the way through the 21st century. And I have to say that, you know, one of the debates that we have coming up at the Alternative View Conference in a couple of weeks is that this house believes that humanity is on the brink of mass extinction. And sadly, that motion is being proposed by somebody who will absolutely shock the audience to the core when they see who it is that's actually proposing that motion. And I shall be opposing that motion. But I have to say that I think it's going to be a very, very tough debate to win, because when we look around, you know, people are literally sleepwalking into oblivion. You know, here in North Nottinghamshire, iGas have two well sites, one up the road here at Misson Springs, which right now is effectively not working, thanks to the Nottinghamshire County Council still deciding on whether or not iGas should be able to effectively breach clause 21, which prevented them from working during the breeding season because the well site backs onto an area of special scientific interest. So no activity here. But yesterday, a few miles to the south of here at Tinker Lane, and Tinker Lane is on the A634. It's just a few miles to the east of Blythe in Nottinghamshire. It's just a few miles south of Bawtry in South Yorkshire. Yesterday, the cellar went into the well site, which is a pretty good indicator that they're making progress in establishing the pad ready to start bringing on the infrastructure. But the reality is, I've said this before, iGas seem to have actually made a brilliant decision by locating their well sites here at Misson Springs and at Tinker Lane, because the population in this area, apart from a few notable exceptions, but the population in the area doesn't seem to care. And maybe they'll start to take a bit more interest when the convoys start coming through the centre of Blythe. But yesterday the cellar going in was witnessed by, I think, just two local people and a couple of representatives from the camp here. The role of the camp is not to do the work of the local community. The role of the camp is to support the local community. But right now it's really tough to find that local community. And the resistance and the concern about what iGas are intending to do in the southeastern quadrant of the Bowland Shale here in North Nottinghamshire just seems to pass everybody by, a bit like what's going on in the sky right now. It just passes everybody by. And if you're not careful, then within a couple of years 5G is going to be rolled out across the country, and the effects are just going to pass everybody by until everybody is so neutered with this multi-pronged attack on the bio-physical, spiritual being of humanity that we are well down that road of towards mass extinction. But if I genuinely believed that that was the prognosis, then I wouldn't be standing here talking right now, and I wouldn't be here camped in a field in North Nottinghamshire. I'd be out playing golf and just making the most of the sort of final days of the species on the planet. This is a time of great risk, but it's also a time of great opportunity. And whether or not humanity as a species rises to that challenge, rises to that opportunity, is very much dependent on each and every one of us. Because if anyone's waiting for someone to come along on a white Charger and save the day, then basically they've got a very, very long wait, because it ain't gonna happen. This is going to come down to humanity as a collective, as we the people. So it's very disturbing for me to be standing here under this horrendous pollution in the skies today, to know that there's probably only going to be a couple of people down at Tinker Lane watching more of the infrastructure go into the well site there, and the fact that 5G is going to be rolled out in 2 years, and the people of Sheffield can't even make the link in many cases between the removal of 17,500 trees and the rollout of 5G, despite the fact that the evidence is there for all to see. So consider the possibility that everything you think you know is quite possibly wrong. But most people, what they think they know is based on being fed a narrative from the lamestream media, and that's how the belief system is created. Well, it's time to step beyond that and consider the possibility that everything that you are reading or hearing, including from me, is wrong. So what does that leave you? It means that you have to do your own research. So I'll leave that with you. I'm going to put up the links to the references that I made regarding the health effects of street lighting and of 5G, and my thanks of course to Mark Steele for sharing this information with me, and also for the work that he's doing. And he's very much out there on point in Gateshead, and of course what he's trying to do is not just raise awareness in Gateshead, but raise awareness right across the country and even beyond, because 5G is a threat to us all. So I'll be back tomorrow at 8:30. Meanwhile, enjoy your day, whatever you get out of it through the pollution, and catch you in the morning.